It has been an exciting year on the Formula One circuit, and joining me to take us through some of the top moments of the season and to make some predictions on what to expect in the months to come is former F1 driver and now expert Karun Chandhok. Thanks for joining in, Karun. Finally, a season where there has been no one-way traffic with Red Bull and Max.
Oh God, thank God. Yeah. I mean, we had 2 years of Max dominance and, I think we were all getting a little bit bored of it, frankly. So when we started the year, the first 5 races, again, we were a bit nervous because, Max and Red Bull came out. Basically, they carried on where they left off from last year. He won, or I think it was 6 out of the first 7 races, and Australia, he had a technical issue, so he could have won that as well. But I think from Miami onwards, we saw that McLaren had a car quick enough to fight against Red Bull. And we saw Lando take that win in Miami, which was I think good. And from that moment on, we've had 15 fantastic weekends as we head to the final triple header. And I think what's so important is we arrive on Thursday or Friday, and I walk into the track, and you talk to teams and drivers and all these people, and nobody knows who's going to win. And we had more than 2 years of not having that feeling, and I think that as a fan of the sport and for everyone at home, I think that's so important, right? You want to turn the TV on and see a contest where you don't know the outcome.
It's safe to say, of course, that it has been exciting and they've all put pressure on Red Bull and Max Verstappen in particular. But Karun, do you sense, especially over the last few months, that it was getting to him? There was a lot of pressure on Max?
I don't think he felt pressure from, the competitors coming, honestly. I know a lot of people have speculated that he's been under pressure and, Lando's put him under pressure and all these sort of things. I don't believe that. I think Max is actually a perfectionist, and I don't believe it was pressure. I believe it was frustration. He knew that he was still driving just as well as he had earlier in the season when he was winning, or for the previous 2 years, but the results were not coming. Results he wanted. Now, I think in Brazil was a race where he was able to prove and show everyone that was the case. His anger and frustration came from not having a car that was able to fight and win. And in Brazil, when the rain came, he not only did he win, and I think he could have won that race by 1 second and still got the same points, right? But he wanted to send a message to everyone to say, listen, I'm still the top dog. And he went out there and he won by 19 seconds and set I think he had the 9 out of the best 10 fastest laps. And his fastest lap was more than 1 second quicker than the next best, which was Lando. And that's a strong statement to send out to your opposition.
Yes, safe to say, Karun, Brazil was definitely one of the best races, considering where Max started and where he finished. But to think it has been quite a year for Red Bull too, considering how they started with all that controversy surrounding their team principal. Even Max Verstappen's father got involved at one point. You've, of course, interacted with him all this year. Would you say that episode affected him in some way?
I think it probably made dynamics between certain personalities. Certainly we know between Max and between Jos and Christian, it all played out quite publicly. There's a lot of mud being thrown around publicly. We have to remember that there's also the person involved in the case, and it's still an ongoing case. So, it's difficult to really talk about it, and we have to think about her in the middle of all this as well. And people have sort of forgotten that part. So yeah, listen, there was a lot of things going on there, but did it affect Max in the car with his performances? No, because he won in Bahrain, and it was a storm that unfolded in the motorhome in Bahrain. It was just chaos everywhere. I was there watching it. All these people, walking around wondering how it's all going to play out, and he won. And he won in Saudi, and he, won in Japan and he won in China. So I don't think it affected Max.
Let's speak about, of course, one of their opponents, McLaren. They've come under a bit of fire recently, especially for their strategies involving their two drivers, choosing to let Piastri win over Norris, affecting that Drivers' Championship. Where do you stand on this matter?
There's two ways to look at it, right? I think they look at it in the long-term view. They looked at it and thought, you know what? We've got Oscar on our books for a few more years. He's coming stronger and stronger. And actually, for his confidence and for his mental strength going into the future, letting him win the race that he deserved to win. He did the hard work getting to the lead in front. He did the hard work in the early part of the race. The only reason he was behind Lando is because strategically they favored Lando. So I think that's the part that needs to be clear, is Oscar deserved to win that race. And McLaren took the long-term view that letting him win that race without team orders was the right thing for the long term, because it gives him so much more confidence. And then I think it helped him win in Baku, right? Because he knew he could win a race and thing. So I think that in that case, that was the right decision. On the flip side, you say, well, they gave up 7 points in the Drivers' Championship, and towards the end of the year, that could be important, maybe. But they don't regret that, and I think that's ultimately it's about their own philosophy, and their own philosophy was about letting the drivers race and go ahead. And actually, I kind of admire that. I think it's so easy to look at. We all must follow corporate orders, and we must, follow what is good for the wider business. But actually, from a pure racing perspective, I don't want to see team orders. And so actually, I have my, big respect to Andrea Stella and Zach Brown for staying to the core as pure racers, which both of them are.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. But of course, we have to speak about Lewis Hamilton. Not one of the best seasons, but there's so much to look forward to next year, where we'll see him in red. We were so used to seeing him in silver all the while. How strange will that be?
It will be a bit strange. I think we've all gotten used to seeing him in Mercedes black and silver, and it is going to be very strange to see him in red. I think. But I'm excited. Listen, I have massive respect for him, right? Like, he's won 7 world championships. He's, he'll be 40 years old next year. He's got more money than God. He can go retire on the beach and just chill out for the rest of his life and do whatever else he wants. But he's taking on the challenge of racing for the most high-profile, high-pressure team in Formula One history, and taking on that challenge at this stage and age of his life and career. Massive respect to him for that. Nobody expected it. Certainly Mercedes didn't expect it. I don't think anyone expected it. So I think it's great. It's great for the sport. I think so many people are going to be tuning into Melbourne next year to see how he goes. I'm excited. I can't wait to see how it plays out.
You interact with all of these drivers through the year, Karun, but I have to ask you, there is something about Ferrari, isn't there? I mean, the prospect of every driver wanting to drive for Ferrari at some point, a bucket list, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think, there's a magic to Ferrari. Absolutely, there's a magic to Ferrari that is very attractive to every racing driver, every racing fan. There's something about the red cars. There's about the history of it. The fact that it was started by Enzo Ferrari and his house is still there, and the town and the whole, and it's as close as you get to a national team. We don't have a concept of national teams in our sport. You like in cricket or in football, where you support India or support Australia, whatever. Yeah. So. But Ferrari is the closest it comes. When you go to the Italian Grand Prix, and I always say to people, if you're an F1 fan and if you have the chance one day, go to the Italian Grand Prix. and then you'll understand the magic of Ferrari, and you'll understand the passion of the fans and the lore of the team.
I can only imagine that. But to wrap it all up and put you in a bit of a spot, FIA, of course, has come down hard on their drivers, preventing them from swearing and using profanities. Now, I understand the need to curb, but drivers saying they're not in school. What are your thoughts on this?
I think at the end of the day, I get it in the sense, these drivers are setting an example for kids and language and behavior, things like that. But equally, I just think there's a lot of energy and a lot of time being focused on this, where there are easier ways to deal with it. You work in the media world. How easy will it be to put a 30-second delay on things and just put a sensor on it? They do it in the cool down room at times. So it would just be something you can fix without having to talk about it. Equally, a lot of the drivers, you have to remember, English is not their first language, and they picked up words and they picked up phrases which are swear words in the English language. But what are you going to do? If somebody's going to come and start speaking in Marathi or Gujarati or Hindi or Tamil, are we going to have translators for every language in a room picking it up? And also, words that are swear words in any of these languages may not be swear words in another language, right? Things don't always translate. So I just think we're creating a very complicated situation when really there are so many more things more important that F1 need to fix and the FIA need to fix and deal with. Things like track limits and the driving standards and the guidelines. There are so many more important issues that energy and mental space should be focusing on.
On that note, thank you so much for joining in, Karun Chandhok. And yes, hoping for a very exciting finish to this season.
No problem. Thank you.